Hey friends,
Hi makers, how are you?
happy Wednesday this time.
It's really good to see you. It's been a couple weeks, and we needed to have that
Yeah.
time while we were getting ready for our anniversary party, so it's really great to see you. Hey Sally, hey Sarah, hi Bailey. It's great to see
We
you
both
all.
chopped our hair for like the first time in ever.
Gail, yeah, I got my hair cut for the first time since at least 2019. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I am. Here we go.
There she is. I remembered where the button was this time. Hey there.
Hi!
Speaking of hair chop, your hair
I chopped it all off.
it looks so good. I love it.
Thank you.
How are you? It's so great to be chatting with you after all this time.
I know. Thank you for having me. This is like my first knitting appearance since pre-baby, pre-Rona.
Oh, it is an honor that you chose to be with us. So thank you. How are things? How is life in your world right now?
Life is pretty good in my world. I can't complain. Been working in the garden, trying to survive the heat wave. We've had a pretty intense heat wave over here.
Yeah.
Now I've got a super baby on my hands. He's a little Hercules.
Yes. Yes. He seems so like early and advanced and like just
He's
no
a lot
fear.
stronger. He makes my first child seem like a potato. He's out of control.
Yes.
I mean, I'm happy. I don't get a lot done during the day because I'm constantly spotting him while he's climbing something.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 16 months.
16. Wow.
Yep.
He's just so curious about everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
Boy, that's what I think my biggest fears of boys is they are so adventurous and want to do all that stuff.
I really looked out.
as far as scary.
The first one is like completely the opposite. He's so cautious and optimistic of everything. So
Yeah.
at least fun.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's kind of I would say my kids are kind of like that too. My first is well, and our kids, our oldest have I think their birthdays are just a day apart. So
Yeah, they are. They like strawberry shortcake too.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, my first is all about people pleasing and just sort of like doing what she can to keep the peace, whereas the younger one is just like, I do what I
Yep. Barreling through life.
want. Yeah, and she has no fear. So,
Yeah.
But
It's on our toes.
yeah,
Yes.
what do you tell us about what you're knitting right now?
So right now I am knitting it's a new version of the sprouting brioche blanket. I've had a ton of requests to make that blanket bigger, but the way the pattern was originally written, I wrote that when I was just learning how to write patterns, really. So the way that it's currently written, it's very hard to just modify on the fly when people write me questions. So I'm now rewriting the pattern to have a much larger size to it. At least I hope I'm just experimenting now. So that's what I'm working on. I've kind of been taking it a little easy with design this year because I feel like we all kind of needed to just relax from everything else that was going on. Plus, I went for probably 2 or 3 years where I was designing and putting out like at least 1 to 3 patterns a month, and that was just like burnout. I need a break. So I've been kind of slowing down a little bit, and enjoying the process more, enjoying the kids more, enjoying the garden more. So yeah. And I honestly taking a nice long break from doing any kind of design made it so like I'm actually enjoying knitting again, which is good because it's a craft and we love it, but when it becomes a job, it can become not so fun anymore. You kind of are forcing yourself to be inspired and you're forcing yourself to come up with ideas, and sometimes you just need to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm gonna just let the ideas come when they come.
Yeah. and the meeting deadlines and everything. And that was one thing I was kind of curious to see how that process went for you now, because it's been interesting to hear a lot of designers where you'd think they would be overwhelmed with what's going on or brain block or anything. And some of them are just like, I don't know, just being like antsy, but they're like, I'm kicking out patterns. I got it crazy and I don't know how. And,
I think it really depends on, you know, your personality, what your life circumstances are. For me, I had planned on taking a break because I was pregnant and due with my son. So I had my son, and then literally about a month and a half later is when we went into lockdown. The first lockdown happened. So kind of the timing was kind of good because I was already in this mode of like, I'm just going to be hunkering down for a few months anyways, and then a few months to do a year and a half. But I mean, it was fine. And I just kind of took it as an opportunity to hold back a little bit and just enjoy settling in with 2 kids and the craziness of that, which was a big adjustment. You always think, like, oh, he'll just be nursing and I'll just be knitting. And it's like, yeah, no, just guys, I'm going to sleep. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, but I personally had chose not to. I had a lot of offers to do virtual teaching. I had a lot of offers to do publications and different things like that. And I chose not to do anything for almost a whole year. I was just like, I'm going to just relax and work on some new ideas and just kind of update some old patterns, put some video tutorials up, and kind of just do a little more community-based stuff. Because I also felt so many of us were out of work, and I felt weird just like, I know you still have to make money no matter what. That's unfortunately our society. But I still felt weird about like, okay, here, pay for this $100 class while we're all out of work.
Right.
I just wanted, and so many people were so generous and helped our family because my husband was out of work for months. That I just really wanted to give back in whatever way I could. So that was kind of my focus. Within reason, I wanted to just give as much as I could.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. And how does he feel about being back at work? Like,
it was.
How is it?
He was nervous because like they really forced. He's a hairstylist. He did my hair. He was forced back to work really early. And then they actually were not included as essential workers in any of the plans for like benefits, vaccines, anything. Like they were on the last of the list. They were in just like regular folk list. Yeah. So they were forced to go back early, lost all the benefits, and then didn't really have any security blankets to fall back on. So he felt a little bit worried about that, but thankfully the salon that he works at, the owner was really on top of her game and made sure that like every precaution that they could have was in place. We haven't had any problems. We've all been healthy, so happy for that. And now, he was able to get his vaccine and he's
Great.
Feeling a lot better, but they still chose like they stopped the mask mandate here for vaccinated people, but they still chose to keep masking at the salon for the time being. I think a lot of businesses are doing that because it puts them in a weird position.
We are too.
And
I haven't run into too many stores that aren't still doing their mask mandate.
I don't just here for them. It makes it easier. So yeah, we did pretty good. I mean, it was nice. The one nice thing about him being put on lockdown was, like I said, we had just had our son, so he got to actually have like a paternity leave, which he never would have had otherwise. So we kind of just kept on looking at the bright side, despite like how nerve-wracking the situation was for a multitude of reasons. Being out of work, prior to that, I traveling and teaching, that was a huge chunk of my income and just what I did. So it was a big adjustment, but everything worked out. So, I can't complain. We're happy.
I'm so glad.
That's what we've been thinking about is my husband, he works IT at the hospital. And so they threw the whole IT department just to work from home. Yeah. And they gave him the option because you can still do your job at home to do it indefinitely. So he's been doing that while also doing some other things. And then as we have a little one coming, I'm kind of excited that he'll be in the house while little baby's, you know,
Yeah, it definitely is nice. It's nice, especially because you realize like how we're forced to go back to work right away after we have our babies, and how fast it goes by and how much we miss when we do that. That's kind of why I had committed to, like, I'm not going back into the teaching circuit for a while after this one, because the time just goes so fast when they're little.
That's part of it, you know. Dads just get to see the overstressed baby in the evening, you know, so they'll be able to
really
see
not that bad. And the overstressed mom.
yeah. So they'll be able to see what it's like, the nice part of it before it turns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
That's cool. Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So your plans are just to kind of still the same with this year, still kind of just taking it slow for a while? Yeah, I mean, I may, like right now I'm weighing my options of like doing some, I've kind of always been more of an independent designer and independent teacher. So kind of weighing my options as far as like how I could do some independent classes online, what options are that way. I'm still just kind of plugging away on some designs. Yeah, I mean, just kind of not worrying too much about cranking it out. I feel like we've kind of, our industry is, you almost have to crank things out every single month to almost keep yourself relevant. And it's such a buzzkill for an artist. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way, and you put so much pressure on yourself. And so yeah, I'm really trying to get out of that cycle and just like really focus on making work that I'm proud of and putting it out and doing it that way right now. So, and it's nice working at least a lot. If I think a lot of people either in our industry or in many industries are trying to make specific changes that way. Like for us, we were like, we're just gonna see how it goes, and we're gonna do a couple things, and we're gonna maybe act some other things, and just kind of try to, I mean, we still get chaotic, but still in a much more managed way that we're like, I think. And then when you do some of your when you get to do a release or a launch, it has so much more feeling and energy to it. And you don't have to feel like, and next, I did a launch now, and next week, I'm going to talk about something totally different. Like, I feel like you're trying to. It's almost like you get sick of hearing yourself promote yourself. Things will feel more purposeful and longer and land. And I think it'll be nice to see, hopefully, a world's changing in that direction. So
and I think that there's just it's hard because, like you said, everyone has to make a living right now, but at the same time, it's like there is, you know, and I mean, you have seen this, we've seen this, like there's a point of saturation, I think, for certain things that like the frenzy, and how can you like be mindful about like promoting something that's new and while still like taking some time in it. I was at home doing work today, and I was thinking like, you know, how much time do we give ourselves just to be with it, to be with like, you know, that our anniversary, like it was like, oh, well, now we've got to think about our yarn club. Now we've got to do this. We've got to move on to this. And it's just sort of like, you know, in the industry in general, it's like people get really jazzed about a particular launch of something. And then it's like, well, what's next? What's next? And I think it's like both as creators and as consumers. I mean, it has to happen on both ends, where it's like we also need to stop creating that sort of buzz all the time. It's okay to just like, there's always going to be really beautiful yarn. There are always going to be really beautiful patterns. There are always going to be really great bags. And it's like, how do we dial back on because it's just so much pressure. It's so much pressure for the people who are creating. And I think for those of us who also consume, I mean, I feel like I've been just totally inundated with things where when I finally am not working, you know, we might spend an entire day just kind of like, fighting maybe because we're sifting through the things that we have like just purchase. And then like, well, I don't have any time to enjoy it. And then I feed into that frenzy where I'm like, well, what's next? Whether it's like, oh, this book that came in the mail, that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, on the one side, it's great because, like, for the frenzy from the designer's point of view, or from the yarn dyer's point of view, you're like, great, it's like everybody bought this $5 pattern and now I'm good for the month. Wonderful. The other part is just like, there's a lot, like I said, with, especially during lockdown, where a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people were waiting on unemployment checks that weren't coming. It was just, I know it was probably different in every state, but in our state, it was a complete mess. It was definitely a mess. And it, on the note of like sustainable culture and like really trying to think consciously about things like that, there is a part of me that it's a feeling of guilt of like, how many shawls do I need to produce this year? And I mean, the truth of the matter is, though, it is a unlimited market. That is the very cool thing about our jobs, where it only takes a handful of people to purchase it to support you. It doesn't have to be the same people over again. Thank you so much to the people that are loyal and love to knit my stuff all the time. So it's like finding the balance between actually creating for the joy and the love of it and being inspired by it, and not just like, I have to keep up with the capitalist grind of like, I have to keep myself relevant. I think so much of that is actually more how social media plays in our careers than so much the community at large and what we're actually producing. I think it really is more about social media has created certain mental loopholes, for lack of a better word. I want to put it nicely, that are really, as an artist, very, very hard to deal with. Like, I feel like a lot of us took several steps back recently because it just, you can make something you're very proud of and you can be very proud of it and you can put it out and the algorithms will put you in a place where not that many people see it, and then you question whether you're proud of it anymore, and that's just, it's ridiculous thinking. You really have to just proud of what you're making and putting out there. And you know, being able to sustain ourselves on it is just an incredible blessing, considering like, it's, of all the jobs you could have, like to sit here and be creative and actually sustain my family off of that is just like nothing to complain about ever. That's for sure.
Sure.
And I think a lot too will be how we communicate to the culture, the community as a whole, because I even remember before any of this, or before even online shopping or whatnot, not before online shopping, but like people would come in, you'd be like, this is what's new. People are like, cool. And then what's coming next? Yeah. And you're,
that's true.
So we're so used to mostly probably big box stores and things like that change every 5 days and all those things. And so like, what do we need to be doing to respond to the frenzy that everyone is just used to for shopping and buying? Like
everybody's kind of been trained to be consumers. And I mean, we're all guilty of it to a degree, but I think for our community, which is supposed to be a like slow crafting sustainable thing, it's just, it's a hard balance to be like, how do I continue to make work that I'm proud of without feeding into this thing of like, I'm just a robot, which is kind of where my burnout came, where it's like, I really felt like I'm just producing for the sake of producing because I feel that I have to release this many patterns a month. And in a lot of ways, it is the truth. Like, in order to survive as a designer, you have to keep releasing things. You can't completely depend on your old body of work. Even to depend on your old body of work, you need to release things to keep yourself relevant. And that part it's a struggle. And like I said, I think a lot of that has to do with social media, which is why I've been trying to kind of rethink like teaching and integrating just kind of who I've always been prior to like Instagram fame becoming a thing for anybody. Because I always considered myself a teacher, like a knitting teacher before a designer. Like whenever anybody would ask me about it, it's like, oh, I'm a knitting teacher and I just kind of design. And I kind of design to teach classes. A lot of my patterns are based around, okay, I can see that this person is having trouble learning via this pattern. Let me try and write it in a way that's going to make sense to them because I'm showing people how to do this. And then everything else was just like a creative thing. I've never really thought of my knitting patterns as like garment design and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at my body of work, a lot of it is so like experimental, and it's even like the blanket that I'm working on now, like the sprouting blanket. It's just like, it's kind of the weirdest baby blanket. I've gotten a lot of strange letters about that baby blanket because it is just like, how do you even use this? I'm like, no, really, you put it over the car carrier and the stroller. It's really cute.
So what, kind of like talking about that process, like how did you, I guess going back to the beginning in your story, how did you get into making and knitting, and then like you said teaching, and then all of a sudden it was like designing and making it work as a designer?
Yeah. So I learned to knit basically because like my whole desire to learn to knit was because I wanted to make like punk rock sweaters for myself. So my grandmother taught me, I like 21 years old, my grandmother taught me how to knit. And the first thing that I ever knit was like a really open, fishnetty, crazy looking sweater. And so I kind of always designed. I never wrote any of it down. I just designed stuff and it was one of a kind. And then from there, a local yarn shop opened in the town I was in, and they asked me if I would start teaching beginner classes. And I just figured, what the heck, it'll pay for my yarn. Like, I think that's where a lot of us start. Like, it's just going to pay for my yarn habits.
Yes.
So I started teaching some beginner classes, and I was still focused on like just like selling one of a kind things that I was making. So I was selling things at craft fairs and local boutiques and things like that. And then I started actually, like when boutiques started asking me for certain things, I'd have to actually write down what I was doing because they would want like 20 of them. They, you know, if I did headbands, they would want 20 of them for the winter. If I did cowls, they would want 20 of them for the winter. So I would have to write down what I actually did so I could do it again. And so that's kind of where I actually started with design, but I still never even thought remotely about releasing patterns. And the truth is, and it's kind of funny, like I had never really knit from a pattern, so I didn't know anything about it. It was just like such a foreign concept to me. Like I kind of knew what the terminology was from reading how-to knitting books and things like that. So then I moved to another town. I started teaching classes there, and it just kind of just kept on coming to me in a way. And then when I had my first son, I had been working like 3 or 4 different jobs at that time. I was working at a restaurant as a line cook, and I was teaching at the yarn shop, doing double shifts every single day until I was forced to be on bed rest. And then after I had him, like I had originally planned, like I'm going to go right back to work after 3 months. And I decided like, I don't want to do that. I got about like a month and a half in. I'm like, 3 months is not long enough. I don't want to do it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try releasing one of my patterns, like one of these things that I've been selling at craft fairs and boutiques, and lo and behold, it sold. And so then I just started writing patterns. Now, same though, a lot of the patterns that I was releasing were patterns that would go with the classes I was teaching. So it was still, a lot of it was still oriented around teaching people how to do a skill. And then, because I mean, honestly, still, there's like a running joke with me and a lot of my friends. Like, I have so many sweaters that I've designed that I'm just like, I don't know if it's lazy or scared. I don't have the skill set to actually grade them yet. And that's kind of what holds me back. And I wouldn't want to release something that wasn't graded properly and wasn't graded for everybody. So I just haven't done it yet. But sure. So I do focus more on accessories, blankets, beginner-friendly projects, things that you can learn from easily. But yeah, so it was just like, it's been a long, we're talking, I mean, at this point, probably 12 years, 13 years from like learning and starting to teach classes to where we are now. So it's funny because a lot of people they come across you and it's like, oh, it's an overnight sensation. And it's like, yeah, it's an overnight sensation 15 years later.
Right.
Barely even an overnight sensation. Like if we get lucky, we have a good one.
Yes.
It's all those little tiny things in the flywheel that happen, and it's the one that people then notice that just like took it.
Yep. Yeah. It's when things go viral, when people like really, really like something, and that kind of floats you through for a while. And then you'll have stuff that you love a lot, and you'll put out, and people are just like, yeah, whatever, it's okay. And I think that's the vulnerability of being an artist. That is definitely one of the hardest things. Is just like giving yourself the grace of the ups and the downs of like, I have to still love what I'm doing. Even if nobody else does, I'm still going to keep doing what I'm doing for me. So
that's a good point.
Yes, that's so important.
I am so critical of my own work, and I'm not doing it for anybody else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can't imagine if I had the guts to then be a designer. I don't think I could mentally. I'd have to do some serious mental work.
It is hard. I feel like I think if we're all honest. I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there that can just barrel through, and that's their personality type. I think if we're all honest, I'm pretty independent and pretty good about stuff, but even it gets to you. There's no way that it doesn't get to you, and you really have to take a step back sometimes and just be like, let me reassess why I'm letting this bother me so much.
Totally.
So
brioche, when did that flash for you?
Stan West he's to blame for that. So Stephen put out, I can't quite remember what year it was. He put out the Excuse Me dress. And I saw that and I was just like, I don't know what that is, but I gotta learn how to do it because I gotta make that dress. And so I was living in Philadelphia at the time. He was on tour and was teaching at one of the yarn shops. I took a shawl class with him because I was like, oh, maybe he can give me like a 5-minute crash course on brioche during this class, which he was gracious enough to do after the class. He showed me like real quick, and I went home and I figured the rest out just by making all my mistakes. And then I knit the dress. Like that was the next thing that I did. And I love the stitch. Like that really, it was just love. I have fun with it. I like the texture play of it. I like the color play of it. As far as it becoming my thing with teaching, definitely never had any intention of that happening. It was just, I started teaching beginner brioche classes at my local yarn shop. Just figured like, there's a lot of people that want to know how to do this. They're having trouble. I can show them. And it just became really, really popular. And then various shops around the tri-state area here started having me come, and then it just snowballed where I was traveling all over the states to teach brioche basically. And I liked the stitch. I think for a lot of people, they get really frustrated with brioche because it's not necessarily a terribly hard stitch to do. It's just when you make a mistake, if you don't understand how the stitch works, it's really frustrating. And that's usually when people throw in the towel and they're just like, I can't deal with this. I don't know what's going on. So a lot of my method of teaching is very hands-on. So in beginner classes, we focus a ton on just, oh, I see what you did wrong there. Let me show you how to fix this, because when you go home, it's going to happen 100 more times. And if you know how to fix it, it's going to take you 2 seconds. Like, it's not a big deal. You can just keep going with it. So I think that a lot of people appreciated that with my teaching style. And so, I was just teaching. I mean, I calculated it the one time. I mean, it was like dozens of classes for brioche every month. It was out of control. So, and it's interesting because I don't think the buzz for the stitch has necessarily died down much. I think a lot of people, maybe some of the hype, but people still really love and enjoy it. So,
well, and your brioche is every time I mean, it's super distinctive. Like make color pairings, but just your aesthetic is really stand out, and I love that so much. I
try and keep it original. I try and keep it my.
And I think
that's one of the things I love the most about brioche is just the color play and texture play. It's just a little bit different than like regular knitting. To me is honestly, especially now that I've learned this, kind of boring. It's still just like I did a color work project the other day. Well, not the other day, the other month. I designed a cowl. I had this idea for this cowl forever. It was modeled off of a swallowtail caterpillar, and I was just like, I've been dying to do this. Let me do this. I was so happy to finish that, and that I love the project. It's beautiful. I'm really happy I did it, but I was just like, I want to be brioche.
That is so cute. I love it.
This feels so weird. I'm just knitting in the round.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, plain stockinette one color sweater must be just like death.
Oh, I mean, honestly, it's strange though, because like for selfish knitting projects, I tend to like, I haven't done one this past year, but that's just because of the baby. But like almost every year I would end up knitting like one of Steven's patterns because he always puts something out and I'm just like, oh my God, I love that so much. I have to knit that. So he did the leggings the one year.
Oh,
that was my self-knitting project over Christmas, and I couldn't put those down. But I think with him, he's smart. He does like marling and color change and stuff like that. And I think that's really what it is more than anything is color play. Color play is just keeps me interested.
Yes, I love that too. And I love his enthusiasm for just, or like empowering you to try your own thing with texture and color and just be like, do it. Just do it. Go for it. And
somebody who works at yarn shops, I will sing his praises till the end because it really is people, you know, I'm sure you guys see this a lot because you're yarn shop owners, but people come in, they want the colors that the sample was knit in, they want the yarn that the sample was knit in, and they cannot see it outside of that. And if they see the sample and it's a color they don't like, it's like, well, I don't really like that because I don't like green or I don't like purple. And it's just like, you can make a knitting pattern anything you want to. And not everybody has that confidence, the color confidence of like, okay, this is going to look good with this. So it does help to have a good local yarn shop, which a lot of people don't have. But there's a lot of good ones online and you can reach out to them. Many people will help you out.
We had fun with that with our doing all these pairings we did for our anniversary party, and we did the just like a heathered and then a mohair with it with speckles, and it was fun picking all these colors. But it was at the same time that we would put them together, and I was like, I think this is going to be so cool. I don't know if the recipient is going to think it's so cool, and it was really nice. To hear people say, you know, I was worried about these colors, but I'm excited how they're coming together.
I've started the ribbing. It's looking, and then they would show it. So it was
cool to see them, get out of their comfort zone a little bit and play with it because we forced them to. Like we said, it's a surprise. This is coming to you, so enjoy it. And it was really cool to see some of them, make that extra move. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
It
can be a lot of fun when you try something that you aren't quite sure about.
It's harder too when you're like, well, I'm going to spend X dollars on this shawl project. Do I really want to spend $100 and not like the colors? I might as well go with the safe bet. So it's kind of nice if you have some of those smaller things or those things that you can try to help nudge them in that direction. But it's fun picking out colors for people.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. I miss that. I've always worked at. This is like the longest I've gone without working at a yarn shop. And I've worked at helping people.
Remind me your local yarn shop
My
current.
local yarn shop is Conversational Threads. And it's an awesome yarn shop. It's big. It's probably one of the nicest in the area. It's a really big yarn shop. All natural fibers at all price points. Just tons of couches everywhere. Very community oriented. Obviously, things are still a little bit slower on that side since the virus. But in normal circumstances, it's an extremely inviting place that you go in and just sit all day and knit if you want, and just sit with us and knit. You can ask for help. There's free help all the time. We do offer classes as well, but it's just a really welcoming homey environment. And I think I've definitely seen a lot of people come in, like you said, they need help with colors, where they're like, I like this project, I have no idea what to do. I kind of like this, and this, and then you just put things together for them, and then you could see like the spark in their eyes when they see the thing that they love. Oh my gosh, there it is. Which is just really rewarding because people are going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money on a project, and it's important. It is important to enjoy it and really love what you're making.
And it's so fun living vicariously through all the customers when you don't get as many chance, or like for you, you're knitting your own things. You're not knitting all these other projects. So you get this little chance to like feel like you're part of someone else's project or part of this pattern, that you get really excited about yourself, even though you will never do it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this sweater. I wish I was. I love your color choices. I'm very excited. I want to see how it
Keep
goes.
bringing it in while you're working.
You live vicariously, and then they come in and they show it off when they're all done, and they're so proud of themselves.
I love it. It's so much.
It feels like you continue to like fire, you know, stoke the fire of, and I feel like I haven't been able to be with customers. Well, neither of us have been with customers quite as much. We tend to do more of our work at home these days. And it is, I've been missing, I'm going to be here tomorrow all day. And it's like, being with customers is just like, that's, because that's what it is. It's not about, I mean, yes, sure. We like to sell yarn, and that's fine. But,
it's those connections and conversations that get just so exciting that you get fired up again too, because it is hard to keep stoking your own fire, you know, especially this whole time of us being alone and overwhelmed with the tasks and the things to do, that most of the, and I don't know if that was the reason, but the fire was just like, at the end of the day, I was like, I'll just stare at a blank wall. I'm not even touching my knitting. I hadn't touched it for so long. But then
I think a lot of us just kind of, it was one way or the other where people were like, that's all they did because they were on lockdown. For me, I really wasn't very inspired either. Where like there's just too much going on and too much to think about and too much to consider, and to come up with original happy ideas right now is just kind of it would be a little less than sincere. Let's just put it that way.
well, exactly. Like sidestep the way that you feel about life so that you can continue to make stuff that makes us feel happy and allows the consumer to put their own thoughts aside for a second. It's just sort of like, and I think that it's absolutely really great to be able to have knitting, and for me, reading and knitting, and, you know, like to have those things as an outlet. But you do have to do some, you know, reflection. You got to do some reflection. You got to do some inner work. You've got to pay attention to some of the stuff that's like, it's because then what, after the great pause, what are we going to do? Just go back out and just continue to consume, continue to uphold white supremacy, continue to, you know, like, I don't know, man. I mean,
that's like the tricky part with our community, where it's, especially over the past couple of years, where it's very divided in the sense where if you're a figure, let's put it that way, if you're a public figure, so you have some following, you have some, I guess, notoriety to yourself, you're kind of just either expected to just be a brand and only put out brand content, or you're going to tick off this one side, or you need to be really loud and you're going to tick off the other side. It's challenging because I think a lot of people forget that we're people. And there's like so much nuance that goes into our lives, and that sometimes we want to share like, hey, we have some really heavy stuff going on. Like we have some really heavy stuff going on, and or like we're just happy right now, you know, we're having a good time, or there's that part of definitely had to take a step back from social media, because it is
a lot.
It gets to you where you're just like, I just want to be who I am, and I want to have the feelings that I have about things, and I want to share when I want to share, but I also am tired of dealing with people getting annoyed that I'm not just putting out branded content, and how it's affecting my business at the same time. And it's just like, I think that's more just a social media issue that we're going through, or a societal issue that we're going through because of social media, and this being kind of the first time where it's kind of really taken over. Because I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't have this, you know, things were really different. And now I look at the younger generations, and they can't even fathom that life existed before it, and that society functioned in a whole different way, and community functioned in a whole different way. And there's the pros of that, and then there's the cons of that. And I think we're hopefully finding the balance in all of this soon, where we can really continue to use the the positive aspect of networking and getting information out and sharing information, without the so negative side of just like really nasty, the nasty vitriol that goes along with social media, where people just really forget that there are humans on the other side of these screens. And a lot of things, a lot of conversations that would be had a lot differently.
Oh yeah.
If you were sitting in a room with somebody.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I thought when all of this started, I felt so lucky that like when we defined ourselves a few years back, people and feelings was kind of part of it. And then obviously it really sparked that it was just kind of like, we had talked about feelings already and our feelings and going through emotions. And so it felt so natural for us to be leaning into that a lot during a time where we needed to lean into it a lot, where at least for us, it didn't feel natural to be like, we need to make a shift and talk about people a lot when we've never done that before. So it was nice being like, and I'm thinking that we're going to hopefully see that as a society that is like commerce or industries, remember being like people is a part of that. So let's make sure you brand part of that as being human and make sure you realize you are branding and marketing to humans with feelings and not just robots to give you money.
Issues that they care deeply about, that they want to share about. And you know, for me it was a similar thing where it's like I've always said that I like to swim upstream, where it's like I'd rather be swimming against the current and being myself and staying true to what I believe in than dealing with like, oh, I have 100,000 followers, but they're like really fake and they'll leave me if I tell them how I really feel about indigenous issues or environmental issues. It's like, no, I'm just gonna be me the whole time, and people that jive with that and they like that, that's great. And I love them and I support them, and those that don't, like, there's other people out there for you, you know, like maybe you can learn something if you open your mind. If you don't want to, that's cool. Like, you'll get there when you get there. I'm kind of at a point with social media where I don't think that forcing is actually solving any of the problems. Like, I'd rather just be like, okay, putting the information out there.
And that's
who want to take it can take it.
With the retail store, it was kind of like before, when you didn't have online presence, every yarn shop had to be the same thing for everybody so that everyone in your area could get anything that they would be as a knitter. And then as it started to become a place that, like, define yourself. Who are you? How are you different than this store? And now everyone's got their own vibe and their feeling, and having that place of getting past the thing that we're like, well, we need to have this so we have these customers. And then it finally is a place that I'm just going to do what I'm passionate about, and the people who are passionate about those same things will be our customers, will be our followers. And so it's that same thing of being able to be like, who my brand is virtually is who I am, and those people will find me. And if they don't like who I am, then they won't be in my presence anymore.
And the truth of the matter, you find over time, like after you've been doing it for long enough, like those people, they're not supporting you anyways. Like they are, no matter what you say or do, they're not really gonna, they're not about you. They're not gonna be about you. You're not their style. And I've said this with yarn shops many, many times, because people ask me like, oh, does this shop get mad at you because you're teaching at this shop? Because there's like this overall, like, is there competitiveness and cattiness? And it's like, some of them do have it. Let's be real about it. But the truth of the matter is, and I stand by this, I still stand by this, is like, there's enough for everybody, and there's a niche for everybody. So everybody has a specific community that they've built around themselves, and that community is there for a reason. Like they love it there, for better, for worse, you know. And that is really truly my experience of like traveling from east to the west and teaching in all kinds of shops. The community that is in those shops is there for a reason.
And I think that, you know, being able to say, like, you know, there are so many layers to you, to me. Like, we all have these layers, and I think that especially in the knitting industry, like, I think that this is it should be a safer place to be able to do that, because knitting is not just a thing that you do, or weaving or spinning. Like, I am a knitter.
Like, it informs every single thing that I do. So it's like, so of course, every single thing that I think about, whether it is like reading or walking or anything that has to do with taking care of other human beings, that's going to filter into my life, because I just don't have the capacity as a writer, as whatever. I don't have the capacity to just be like, well, here's work me and here's me.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I can't.
And
I can't do that. So.
Not enough of me to go around. Whatever you're seeing, this is what I've got. This is me. And so I have to say, there are more boundaries, I suppose, that I need to impose on myself, that we need to impose, just to kind of so that I don't feel quite as injured when someone says X, Y, or Z about, a product. But at the same time, it's like, I understand why, boundaries need to be better and clearer and whatever. And I can't be available at any given time. Liz can't be available we just can't. It's not possible.
It's so hard when you're so passionate about something though, and so involved, to have some sort of boundaries, because you're like, I want everyone to love it and enjoy it, and this is how I feel.
Everybody happy.
It just goes all out.
But then you realize, it's midnight on a Saturday.
Yeah.
I need to go to sleep. I don't need to be working right now.
Right.
I think that's more like real finding boundaries within living in the cyber age, more so than just like having boundaries as who we are as people. Because it is just like I said, for those of us that weren't born into this, we're used to, or we grew up with a different type of reality where you did have a separation between X, Y, and Z. But, the nice thing with social media is it is like a flushing system where, it's just like it opened up and the flood tides came out, and for better or for worse, everything kind of got revealed and continues to get revealed for whatever its true colors may be. And so that's been, it's interesting, because I feel like the whole dynamic of, for instance, like the conversation around racism within the knitting community, it's great to have this conversation, but I still stand by this, like, to say the knitting community is inherently racist really minimizes the problem. The world has a problem with racism. Some of them happen to be knitters. Like, you're not going to find it immune in this community just because we're crafters. Like, that's not how it works. Anybody that's experienced this from a real life perspective knows, like, we shouldn't be minimizing the magnitude of such problems. And I think that's where some people just shut down and they don't even want to hear it, because it's just like they're not interested. They never were interested. They're in their zone. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. And that's what their reality is based on. And hopefully, compassion continues to trend, and people start to realize that, like, ultimately it is for the good of everybody that we care about everybody. And for me, just really don't minimize the issue. It's like global
pervasive.
It's a problem.
I felt like when we really started really digging into it and talking about it all the time and really opening those wounds, and it was like, man, if that's happening here, I feel like maybe just like knitting community and the knitting industry out of maybe all of the industries worldwide, it's got to be really small. I feel like it's small. There must be, I'm hoping.
And I mean, it gives you a grasp of how like large the problem is, because you have such a small faction of it, and you can see it rear its ugly head even within this small faction of people. And not to minimize it either. It's a big community. Lots of people craft. All kinds of people craft. But that's the point. A lot of people craft. All kinds of people craft.
Absolutely.
Within every industry, it is. You have every single mindset show up, and that's a community. That's a globe. That's the world. And I think that was kind of a thing that is like, man, if it's this much here, it's got to be booming everywhere. You know. And I think that was a good, for me, it was like, yeah, this is real.
And it's for a lot of people, it's relative within the knitting community because they actually have forged friendships through this community, and they start to look at it from less of a kind of relative perspective of like, it's this theoretical thing that's not happening to me, so yeah, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, versus, oh yeah, that just happened to my friend. And then it becomes a little bit more, for some people, it does become a little more of a thing of like, we have to figure out ways of combating when this is happening and why we're allowing it to happen in our spaces, which is nice. I mean, that's the one positive. I think a lot of people have kind of put their foot down within their own, not everybody. I mean, a lot of people, like I said, they just want to be brand. They don't really want to do it. It's a minefield for them, and you know, that's their choice. I'm not going to make any comment on it. For me, like I said, I've always just been pretty outspoken about the things that I care about long before this became a trend within the community. So people just knew what to expect from me and what I'll tolerate within my space and what I won't. It's just business as usual. I mean, I think we care about people. I think humanitarianism is just like a good, all around good thing. It's like caring about people should be a trend.
In a crafting community, it is more personal. It is more one-on-one. It is smaller, which means it's more personal, versus maybe large corporations that can put up walls and separation, and it's not so interactive. But I mean, we couldn't count how many times people are like, or other business owners will be like, you know, keep business as business, you know, and you're just like, what?
Sorry.
Their perspective, as far as capitalism goes, all money is green, and that's where they're coming from. And you know, I'm not gonna. I'm not exactly a super capitalist. It's like I don't make a living. I don't want to make a killing. I don't care about that. Like if I have enough to survive, like I don't really care if this racist person is good. I prefer that they don't. Like, it's just not my cup of tea. I'm gonna take them off. Inevitably, I'm going to take them off. I'm going to get a message about something I'm saying, about something, whether it's the Tibetans or the countless indigenous tribes and sovereign nations across our nation. Like, it's way to me.
It's a lot. And I think that's one thing that's been nice with like where it feels like when we've been so isolated during all of this, having the Zoom, having the lives like this has felt this connection where we can have these conversations, where we can get inspired, and watching others who, like my husband is one, his life has been his four walls in his bedroom where that's all where his work and world happens. And so it's really hard to see he doesn't have a community to tap into and other people's life experiences and things like that to help go through these processes. So some of those, like, I feel like we get to work on ourselves all the time because we're constantly with communities, talking with communities. And for other people, when you are isolated and it's really hard for you to move through these changes, when you're, so it'll be, I think, obviously a lot of things will be good when we get, but it'll hopefully get even better being with more people.
Yeah, we definitely learn how much of a social creature we are when you get isolated. Even myself, like I call myself an extroverted introvert because I am definitely like very content to just be home with the kids, and that's just, I can easily stay home for months and not care. But I also love to teach to like 20-30 people at a time, and you know, so there's a balance between the two. I definitely have missed it, especially as a work at home, stay at home mom. I also teach my kids at home, so it's just a thing like when I would go to teach and travel and stuff, that would be like, okay, I'm still also Lavanya. I'm not mommy. I'm not just a teacher. And so for me, like finding that balance within that this past year has been pretty interesting. My garden is like my little sanctuary. Out in the garden, and I have like my moments of alone time. Though my son loves to help me with that too, so which is great.
Love it.
We're not even realizing how much us, introverts miss it. Like there's so many more tears I've had seeing people that I didn't know would affect me, seeing them for the first time in forever, where you're just like, people, I didn't even realize how much I've missed people, but I missed people. So those moments have been nice to have those realizations of how important it really was.
And I think when we come back to it, I mean, I think like our whole conversation tonight has been just more about like mindfulness and kind of sort of intentionality, and more isn't better. And so it's sort of like how, moving as we continue to kind of get back out there, how do we do it in the right ways, you know, to spend better or, you know, to be authentic in the time that we get to spend together. I mean, I think that's like really important. And I mean, not just consuming to consume or producing to produce and selling to sell. I think
all those words of things being mindful and purposeful and intent, all of those things that will be exciting, from purchasing, from conversations with friends, from get-togethers with people,
from saying
holidays,
the right
whatever.
things, for standing up for the most essential human rights. I mean, I think that's just all super, super imperative. That like, I know that there will be people that will move on and just be like, oh, remember that time, and bury but I hope that the people that we know can kind of move on, you know, come out on a different side. So
it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Before we lose you, though, because we might get cut off in a couple minutes here, for all of the fun people who came to join us today, we do have a really cool giveaway. If you want to show them.
Oh, sure. We posted it on the grid, but we thought we came up with some colors that felt very Lavanya to us. But it's a giveaway. Everything. Sorry, it's super sunny right here where we are, but Anyway, red stag fiber, some Dhaka sock, Bella Filato, some Surrey, which is so lovely. Big little yarn in a mohair merino sock, and wobble gobble in a merino singles, and a tin of our royal blend tea, which is like Earl Grey. So tomorrow from 8 to 2, we'll have it up live on the website, and you can enter to win. And
some great color brioche combos. I think.
Yes, really great for brioche. So.
Yep, you'll see it on the website at woolenhoney.com under the events. There'll be the giveaway. And so, you'll just have the instructions there of how to be able to win this fun giveaway.
Lavanya, thank you so much.
This was so
Thank
great.
you for having me. This was so fun.
And when you are feeling safe and when we are feeling like it's a better time to open up for physical in-person events, we really would love you to be here.
Oh, so, I would love to do it too. It's been a long time in the making.
Yeah, we would love it. So we'll plan on it for some time, and we'd love. And if you can bring your family, it would be really great.
Do some fun Michigan little outings while you're here.
Cool. So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You guys have a lovely day, night.
You too.
All right.
Bye,
Bye, guys.
all.